are not up to scratch yet, but it looks like it's happening. So get ready for Mishnah 15 on page, in the article Siddur 560 or 561. Rabbi Elazar Hamoidoi. My technical skills are not
It's 5 o'clock, look.
Yeah,
Can you see?
okay. Let's now. How do I get back to you guys?
Back.
Okay, here we go. So, Rabbi Elazar Hamodai, Modai is a place. The Modaite, he says five different categories of people who forfeit their place in the world to come, unfortunately. Amachalel es hakochim, one who desecrates sacred things. Amevaze es hamoyados, one who disgraces the Yom Tovim, the festivals. Amalbim pnei chaveri barabim, one who humiliates his fellow in public. We spoke about that previously. Mefer brisa shel Avram Avinu, one who nullifies the covenant of our forefather Abraham. Either he doesn't have a bris or he puts the foreskin back on surgically. And one who perverts the Torah contrary to the halacha, he misinterprets the Torah deliberately, distorting it. All of the above categories of people, even if they have Torah and good deeds under their belt, they forfeit their share in the world to come. So these 5 things are quite serious. I'm sure you can understand a person who decides not to have a bris. Or even worse would be to put it back on. Okay. Again, listen, my last request for people, if there is noise in your environment, please mute yourself. Otherwise, I have to mute you. Okay, so today, unfortunately, bris is the most observed mitzvah of all of Judaism, historically and even today. And yet today, we are beginning to see noises from left-wing people, very far-out people, who are decrying the whole concept of circumcision, who are saying we are mutilating our children, and it's ridiculous. And there's even a Jewish group who sought to ban circumcision in San Francisco a few years ago. Thank God it was defeated in the city council. But what about the others? So there's the Maharal has an understanding of this Mishnah, and the Tiferes Yisrael, and I'll share with you a few of the commentaries. So the Maharal says that the kind of person we're discussing here is a person who worships intellect alone, but he denigrates the physical and the human. Then the Tiferes Yisrael, one of the classic commentaries on the Mishnah, he says we're talking about someone who would be called an apokoides, one who denies the basic principles of God and that God runs the world, and therefore he forfeits a share in the world to come. The 5 examples refer to 5 different levels of denial. The first individual doesn't believe in God, so he denies the existence of sacred objects. For example, sacrificial meat, sacrifice, that you could bring an animal onto the altar of God and consecrate it. He doesn't believe that the physical can be consecrated. So, because he denies the whole principle of God and the existence of sacred objects. The second one believes in God, but believes that the world always existed. And therefore, he mocks the Yom Tovim, Shabbos, which commemorates the creation of the world. God worked for 6 days and rested on the 7th. denies the existence of miracles, which every yontif commemorates a different miracle in the history of the Jewish people. So he denies all that because he denies that God is involved in the world. All right, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to mute everybody. If you want to unmute yourself with something, you may. Okay, I hope that's better. Right. The third one believes in creation but denies that man is created in God's image. We'll talk about that later. That's the one who doesn't believe in the bris, or he nullifies his bris. The fourth one believes in the sanctity of man but denies the unique mission and the sanctity of the Jewish people, our mission that we got at Mount Sinai. And there, where is it? Oh, sorry, that's number 4. That's the bris. Number 3 was the one who humiliates other people. Right. If he doesn't believe man is created in God's image, so therefore he can humiliate the person. He's not important. The fourth one, who nullifies the bris, he does not believe in the unique mission of the Jewish people. And the fifth one believes in the Torah, but denies the authority of the oral Torah, Torah Shebal Peh, the rabbinic law, and the way the rabbis believe that Moshe taught the oral tradition as well. So those 5 correspond to 5 different types of heretical beliefs of different people. The Rebbe gives a very interesting insight here, which I found fascinating. He says, we're talking about a person who might be possessed of Torah and good deeds, but refuses to recognize a fundamental principle of reality, that human beings can sanctify the physical material world. We can make this world holy. That's something he doesn't go along with. So therefore he doesn't respect sacred foods from the temple. Therefore he belittles the Yom Tovim, because he just says, what do you guys, you just eat and drink, you just fresh on Shabbos and Yom Tov. It's nothing. And we are the ones who sanctify the Yom Tovim. We pronounce, the Jewish people pronounce when is Rosh Chodesh, so we pronounce when is Yom Tov. If he shames his fellow, it's because man is physical. So if you're physical, you're worthless. You nullify the bris, because again, you don't believe that God would sanctify a human being by making a covenant with him in a physical way by a surgical circumcision. And finally, he misinterprets the Torah because he has knowledge of the Torah, but because he doesn't believe the oral Torah, the oral tradition, which comes from human beings, the rabbis who taught the Torah, therefore he doesn't go along with them, therefore he misinterprets it according to his own ways. These are the 5 different categories, and such people sadly forfeit their share in the world to come. Let's move on to the next Mishnah, which is 16, a short Mishnah. Rabbi Shmuel Omer, we'll talk about Rabbi Shmuel just now, hopefully I have time. He couches his words very unusually. He doesn't use straightforward language, Rabbi Shmuel. He says like this, Heve kal lerosh. Literally it means be light to the head. What does that mean? You should be light-headed. So the Art Scroll translates it as be light, be yielding to a head, to a superior. V'noyach litishchoret, be pleasant. Tishchoret literally means to the black. Shachor is black. Tishchoret from the word black. So, but the Art Scroll translated it as what? The young. How does black mean young? You still have black hair. You haven't gone white yet. And receive every person joyfully, cheerfully, with simcha. So
Yes.
the last thing, you may recall we had in a previous Mishnah in Pirkei Avot from the teachings of Shammai. He said, receive every person b'sever panim yafot, with a smiling countenance, with a happy face. Yeah. Now Rabbi Shmuel goes beyond what Shammai said. He said, don't you give him a smile. Do it b'simcha, show joy. That's more than just a smile. Greet the person with joy. So how do we understand this? So Rabbi Shmuel, according to some, this is the Rabbi Shmuel who was a Kohen Gadol, a high priest. And he was a descendant of Aaron HaKohen. One of Aaron HaKohen's great characteristics, which we read about in chapter 1, if you recall, was that he loved all people and he brought people close to Torah. So because he too is a Kohen, following in that tradition, he loves all people and he loves peace, and therefore he said we must greet people not just with a smile, but we must greet them with a hug. Not during COVID, please, but I'm just coming from a meeting with the rabbis and the doctors to work out when and how we can open the shuls, please God, soon. Stay tuned. And who can do hagba, you know? So they said no hugs in shul, please, you know. You can do hagba, but no hugs. Anyway, so but we should greet all people with absolute joy. So there are some people, you know. I had a guy in the shul. He once complained to me, "How come I don't give him a hug?" He goes to a different shul. The rabbi gives hugs. I said, "Listen, I'm a nice guy, but I'm not the hugging type. What should I tell you? I'm not to be, you know, if a guy has a simcha or there's something special, I'll give him a hug, you know. But I don't go hugging every person. It's not just my nature, you know. It doesn't mean I don't love you. But trust me, I love you, even if I don't hug you. That guy, I have to remember that guy needs a hug. Okay, I'll do my best. But Rabbi Shmuel is saying that the young and black-haired, okay, some interpret the mission like this: serve God at the head, at the beginning of your life, and continue to be pleasant to God in your old age as well. Okay, so you have to do that throughout life. We move on. I just want to say one thing about Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, the next Mishnah, Mishnah 17, on the bottom of page 560. Rabbi Akiva, it's sort of, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel were good friends, and they often discussed things, and they often argued in the Gemara. So I'm not saying he's necessarily arguing, but he does add something which seems to be relevant. Rabbi Akiva says, "Schoit b'kalus reish magilnes odel ever." Mockery and levity can accustom a man to immorality, and that's what I want to talk about now, because it follows directly on what Rabbi Shmuel just said. Rabbi Shmuel said, greet every person, not just with a smile, but with a hug, with joy. And Rabbi Akiva is cautioning us, be careful. Joy is very nice, and laughter is very nice, but if it's associated with frivolity, then it can become negative and it can become dangerous. So often the Mishnah cautions us against mockery and levity and cynicism and making a joke of everything and not taking things seriously and respectfully. So maybe he's tempering what Rabbi Shmuel was saying. Rabbi Shmuel says, greet everybody b'simcha, and a person should be b'simcha, and we should serve God with joy. It says in Psalm 100, Ibdu et Hashem b'simcha. Serve Hashem with joy. But at the same time, it mustn't be a frivolous kind of joy. It should be a holy joy. And now the same Rabbi Akiva gives us a very, very important teaching in the following Mishnah, which is Mish. Did I lose my place? Sorry. Mishnah 18, top of 562 and 563. This is coming, he used to say, but who's the he? The he is Rabbi Akiva. So this is a very critical Mishnah. Choviv Adam shenivra b'tselem. Beloved is man and woman, human beings, we mean, who has created in God's image. It's indicative of a greater love that it was made known to him that it was created in God's image, as it says in Bereshis, Ki b'tselem Elokim. God tells us that in the image of God he made man. It's in the Chumash. Then he goes a step beyond and he says, Chaviven Yisrael, Israel is beloved, for they are described as children of Hashem. It is indicative of a greater love that it was made known to them that they are children of Hashem. As it's written, Bonem Atem Lashem Alkechem, you are children of Hashem, your God. Beloved are the people Israel, because God gave us something precious. What is it that he gave us? He gave us the Torah. Please God, we'll get back to Shul. We'll put back the Torah. We'll say these words, Ki lekach tov nosati lochem. I have given you a good teaching. Do not forsake my Torah. So what do we see here? We see here two things. Number one, every human being, Jewish, non-Jewish, man, woman, black, white, green, yellow, polka dots, makes no difference. Every Jew, every human being is created in the image of God. In fact, many rabbis have said that we should actually be trying to influence not only our fellow Jews to keep the mitzvahs, but our fellow non-Jews to keep the 7 mitzvahs of Noah, the 7 Noahide laws that are the code of morality incumbent upon all of humankind. If we can help them with that, we should. In the olden days, a Jew who was downtrodden and persecuted couldn't exactly tell a non-Jew how to behave. But today they respect us a lot more, even though we have anti-Semitism. Generally speaking, they do respect us a lot more. In fact, that's part of what anti-Semitism is about. It's a reaction, maybe some jealousy. And they may very well listen to us if we talk to them about the 7 codes of laws of Noah. So every human being is created in the image of God, and therefore we should respect every human being. And every human being is the highest level of creation, right? There's doimim sameach chai medaber. There's the inanimate, the mineral kingdom, which is lifeless, like a rock. Then there's vegetation, which has growth. Plant grows, so we see some more life. Then there's the animal kingdom, which is not only growing, but they run around, they procreate. And then we see the highest level of creation, which is humankind. It's called medaber, intelligent human beings who are actually able to speak. And we have to understand that even if you might be a member of the SPCA and you love your dog and you love your cat, I know they're very special, and that's terrible how some people don't look after animals. It's a mitzvah of the Torah not to show any cruelty to animals. Having said all that, we still believe that there is a fundamental difference in the caliber of life and intelligence between the animal kingdom and humanity. And it's interesting that the Nazis were very, very into the SPCA and animal rights. They didn't care about killing a million Jewish children, but that's just besides the point. So, what is the image of God? What does it mean, the image of God? You look at a person's nose, you could see God. So, for all of humanity, the image of God is the mind, our intelligence. Somebody sent me just today a WhatsApp video of a chimpanzee standing up on 2 feet and playing table tennis with somebody, with a human being, and he was actually hitting the ball back. It was quite unbelievable. So this chimpanzee might think that he's a ganze chacham because he could play ping pong, but he's still an animal, and therefore a human being is still on a different level. So the mind, and it's called medaber, even though a parrot could mouth a few words, no animal, no parrot can speak intelligently. And this is something which sets apart the human race from the animal kingdom. And this, according to the commentaries, is what we mean by the image of God. God endowed humanity with a level of intelligence which no other level of creation was blessed with. And that's why, if you look at the difference, besides the monkeys and the chimpanzees who stand on 2 feet, most animals walk on 4 legs. So if you walk on 4 legs, just think of the cow in the field. What does the cow see all day? In fact, his face is downward. So what is he looking at? He's looking at the grass. He's looking at his food the whole day. A human being who is vertical, who stands on 2 feet, he can actually look up and see, wow, what a beautiful blue sky in the African winter today. What's the sky? The sky is heaven. You can look up, you can see something higher than just grass, than just food. That's a fundamental difference between the animal kingdom and humanity. And we have freedom of choice. Because we were given intelligence, we are given freedom of choice. Animals act on impulse. Human beings are expected to act with intelligence and make discerning choices of how we're going to live our lives. Then we go a level up. I know this sounds very chauvinistic, forgive me, but I'm quoting the rabbis in Pirkei Avot that a Jew has a is particularly beloved by Hashem, is called children of Hashem. Now, all of humanity are children of God. Elsewhere, it actually says that the Jewish people are the firstborn. My son, my firstborn, Israel. So there is something special about the Jewish people. What is it? Not just a mind, not just intelligence, not just the ability to make critical choices, but a neshama, a Yiddish neshama, which is a part of God. So there is something unique about that. And it's interesting that even the anti-Semites and the anti-Zionists, by singling out Jews and Israel for their criticism, in a backhanded sort of way, they are actually unwittingly reaffirming Jewish uniqueness and Jewish belovedness. They are judging us by a higher standard. Why? Because we should be judged by a higher standard, because we have something going for us. I'll just end. We're running out of time again. I'll just end. I remember in the Bronx Zoo. I only once went to the Bronx Zoo in my whole life. From Brooklyn to the Bronx is a long way off. But I went into one of the big buildings there. I think it was the Ape House. And then there was a sign. It was very dark in one corner, and they had a big sign, and a very frightening kind of sign. It said, "Beware, you are about to go into the cage of the most ferocious, dangerous animal in the world. Other animals basically kill for food or for territory. This animal kills for no reason. This animal kills his own." And I'm going closer and I'm looking, wow, what is this going to be? A lion, a tiger? What kind of monster am I going to find over here? And you get closer and there's a mirror. And you look at yourself, human beings. We are the most ferocious animal of all, unfortunately. But it doesn't have to be that way. God gave us the image of God, and He gave us intelligence, and He gave us a soul, and we should be able to choose better than we have chosen. Okay, we have time for one more. Let's go to 21. Rabbi Loza ben Azariah, we spoke of part of this Mishnah previously. I'll just speak of the first one. Im ein Torah, ein derech eretz. Im ein derech eretz, ein Torah. There's no Torah, there's no worldly occupation. So he translates here derech eretz as worldly occupation, meaning a livelihood, a business, a profession, a job, something to make a living. You can't just have Torah. You need to make a living as well. You can't sit and rely on miracles that somebody else is going to feed you, and you're going to just sit and study Torah a whole day. How are you going to survive? So you have to have a combination and a balance of Torah and derech eretz. So derech eretz means a livelihood, but derech eretz also means respect. I'm sure somebody's told you, why don't you have derech eretz? Derech eretz is also understood as respect. And it can also be understood as the way of the world, meaning menschlichkeit, to live like a mensch. So yes, there's Torah, which is Torah knowledge, and there's menschlichkeit. Torah teaches us menschlichkeit, especially Pirkei Avot. But in my experience, I've seen that many people learn menschlichkeit more at home from their parents than they do in school. In school, we're taught information, but menschlichkeit and morality and decency and appropriate behavior, we often pick up more at home from our parents. And I'm sad to say it, but I have seen even people who are scholarly in Torah knowledge, but they lack menschlichkeit. And I've seen people who are great mention, but they lack Torah. So one has to have both, okay? The 10 Commandments, the tablets, two sides of the tablets. One side was man to God, one side was man to man. Human relationships, we need both. A good Jew is good to God and good to man. Good to God, good to light. And if we only do one side, then unfortunately we're a 50% Jew. So we have to be 100% Jew, and we have to be able to do both. And I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. So I'm sorry we couldn't get more done, but we'll still have, I think, one more chance to get back to this chapter. We're going to carry on with Mincha now. You're all welcome to stay for Mincha, ladies and gentlemen. Those of you who have to go, geh gesund. Let me close the YouTube.